They decorated this area with tank and temples. I don't know what tank means unless it means large ponds, which would make sense. According to local tradition, there were 85 temples, but now are 25 stands in varying stages of preservation. Lost its importance around 1500 AD. Notice that's the same time that the Anasazi disappeared. Interesting that the Shasath Yagini and the Brahma and the Lagwan Mahadeva are constructed of granite, not sandstone. I quote, "The erotic figures have given us the finest sculptural compositions which vibrate with a rare sensitiveness and warmth of emotion, and remarkable for their sculptural quality." Don't appear to be any other folks in the complex now as I enter into it, and it's very well maintained, as you would expect. I'll pan from left to right so you can get a sense of the size of what remains. And now I'll pan this subsection. I think it's the Eastern temples it's referred to, inside the fence. And then we'll look at each in detail. This is the Lakshmi Shrine. It's locked. I don't need to get in it anyway. We'll go up and take a little bit more look at the detail, but notice how in the restoration they've used chunks from other temples that have been disintegrated. This man here came walking up to me from a distance and said, "What country are you from?" I told him, "Don't start." He said, "Okay," and turned away. The Lakshmi basin, how much of it is filled in with stuff from other temples. Normally this would be offensive to me, but if that's what it took to reconstitute this and preserve this particular temple, computer capabilities now and in the future should allow them to record all of this information and, if necessary and possible, rebuild the temples that they came from. So maybe this is just a darn good way to warehouse them. What we're looking for here is the detail of carving. And this is a beautiful little dome. For the small size, consider the effort involved in creating that. It's only about 8 feet square or less. And the restrained detail on the side. Now, often there are 3 different kinds of characters that we'll see, female characters, I mean. Look at the interesting detail. Certainly that Gampura, or Gampuram, reflects the general design we've seen, except for that curious radiator type circular top ring, which looks more like a technical heat dissipator. But the restraint of this iconography just in the center, I don't know whether that's red painted white stone. There's a hint here that it may be, or red sandstone. I don't think it's the latter. This temple is dedicated to the boar reincarnation of Vishnu. We'll go up and take a closer look at it. But again, notice the top generally conforming to that Gampuram design, but basically very simple graphics on top. Here we're inside the temple. Forget what you call this. Corbel, I think, is the ceiling. But this is the boar. And notice that curious design there. I wonder what that is. And here once stood a statue. You look at the detail. This looks like some people on a boat. Here probably are multiple representations of Vishnu. Yeah, curious thing, and I wonder what part stood there. Here, a large horde of villagers going somewhere, whether they're shopkeepers, I don't know. But they seem to be going to that temple that's outside of this fenced complex. This temple gives a very solid sense of space and strength, really. What's difficult for Westerners to do, including myself, is to empathize with the religious and psyche importance of this boar. Appears to be mostly women, but not totally. Certainly that's an active temple, understatement. It's interesting how in my ignorance, inside my brain impliedly presume that this is not as important a place as, let's say, a Christian church, even though I have little respect for the Christian church. It's just my ignorance of their culture here that I hope creates that inherent mindset. This big temple is Lakshmana Temple. The wall portion of the temple is studded with balconied windows with ornate balustrades. 2 rows of sculptures, including divine figures, couples, and erotic scenes, adorn the wall surfaces. This is apparently the largest and most well done and well preserved. So let's go explore. I'll look to the sides just so I don't forget that, for whatever the reason. Here we're about to go under the entranceway. And the man advises me that it's filled with Kama Sutra, which I believe means intercourse. Again, we can focus a bit on this dome, beautifully carved, but it's weathering. I think from water, that's what the white is, something percolating out of the limestone. I don't know if these were colored or not. I don't see any evidence of paint, but I don't know. This is a very powerful, overwhelming almost interior, just on gut feel, without looking at any of the detail. It reminds me to some degree of Roman temples with their inner columned portions. This is a small wall shrine, very much like a Christian church. I expect these side portals simply gave light. This is the entrance to the inner sanctum, which normally we would never be allowed into, and certainly not to photograph. But there appears to be no restriction on that now. Sadly, it's in the early stages of deterioration. There's no light in that inner sanctum other than natural light, so all we see is what you see. Here we're walking around the left side in a clockwise manner of that inner sanctum. Notice these bulbous breasted nymphs. There are 3 kinds. I won't try to articulate them from memory, but it's clear that in their day they had the same playboy fascination for large breasts as we do today. No surprise. Nature's goal remains the same over hundreds, if not thousands, if not millions of years. It's from the shininess of that one on the left that it's a totem for touching. Whether it has religious significance or merely prurient, I don't know. Here's some male figures. Here's just one of those column sections opening up to the outside. And curiously, for me, a stairway carved of stone to get up to it. And that may account for the burnished breasts. Think of the untold thousands who've walked the path I'm walking around this inner sanctum. Here, what looks like a horse-type character. I wonder if the horse is important because of its studly nature. I'll look more closely at the detail on this upper portion of the column. To call that a capital that's outstanding would be an understatement. Never seen one quite so grandiose. Not yet seen any Kama Sutra, so I'm feeling quite put out. This is that small temple we saw to the left when we were gazing from the front. These look like people playing drums down here. I'll just pan up through these layers of plateaus, if you will, of sculpture and architectural detail. And then we'll look at it all much more closely. Notice the bottom is pretty much just simple graphics, but getting a little bit more extravagant just beneath the elephants. And notice that that next layer above this one right here of just graphic is the monsters that we've seen before. A row of those has got to be a significance to that. I should be able to find out. And then rows of elephants. Characters seem to be doing something different with the elephants, but I don't know what that is. Whether that stick is really some kind of a staff of importance. In this particular shrine on the face of this wall, our elephant friend again, and I think that may be called Ganesh. Continuing up, a couple of plain layers of stone that's been worked, and then some detail, much restrained it looks like. A couple of quarter round and half round sections, and then in recessed level. And it looks like people may be playing instruments. I don't know for sure from here. Then another graphic, similar to the one that started all of this. And then more elephants. And above that, more graphic, but with a character holding up that floor.
1, 2, 3 on the fourth peak is the lion, and the fifth is the highest. So these five main distinguish them easily by these five main peaks.
They're man and woman, but hardly exciting yet. Darn. On the side of the temple probably reflects another Vishnu iteration, although I think looking very human iteration, I don't know what it is. Of that detailed strip in the center rises a different set of motifs, and that is some kind of scenes. What they are, I don't know, probably iterations of Vishnu, and then climbs up to another Gampuram-like structure as it soars higher and higher up.
The carving on the outside is representing the worldly life. Though they have talked a lot about
it's almost too complex for the human mind to absorb. Here we can see man and woman frolicking, or man and nymph frolicking, one of three kinds. Curious figure in the center there, almost looking wolf-like from here. I'm going to pan up just for the excitement of the magnitude of this detail. Here's some aggressive frolicking. The next level up. It's always interesting to look at these little niche shrines or depictions, if you will, particularly one like this, even higher up, even smaller, and blocked by that water spout. What was the point of that? Only I, the restorers and the builders would see this. Notice these characters that provide the support on the capital of those pillars. Well, so far I'm not going to give up my Penthouse and Playboy magazine subscriptions, if I had them, for what's being seen here.
because if someone working under pressure cannot give life.
These small Gampuram shrines are found at all four corners. It all starts to become redundant, doesn't it? Here, a large water spout, created as one piece, you'll notice, cantilevering out from somewhere deep inside, is some character torturedly bent. Look at this scene that appears to be a man and a woman teasing a monkey. Indian men, some very older ones, with a guide who can really appreciate and empathize with the religion of this building. If only I could take a pill and do the same. That looks like a electrical lightning arrestor. This older gentleman made sure after I said namaste to him, hello, he was sweeping up above, that I did not go away pruriently deprived. We'll just look at this frieze. Scenes perhaps of war, Looking at this scene where an elephant appears to be grabbing someone, and there's a soldier with much larger than the smaller person, indicating the smaller person's a victim and the enemy. But I'm reminded of a king who had a small shrine created to memorialize his favorite execution elephant. Now just carry that thought in your mind for a moment. What would it like to see, not to mention be, executed by an elephant? I'll go slowly through here. Now you can only imagine from the scenes we're looking at on this temple that either the people in Pompeii visited here unbeknownst to history, or the reverse. But here are all the various positions of sexual intercourse, etc. So pay close attention in case you've missed something in your training. And now back to war. The two seem to be very much connected. This is curious because there's a couple pigs now. Normally there are pigs around always, but in the battle, in the war, why would they be here? Some man with a bow, perhaps? Okay, enough war. That's got to get your attention, particularly when I say that war and sex are often connected. I mean, this is a glorification of what we would consider pruriency. The hand combat. And here nymphs paying obeisance to some pot-bellied important person. And an expression of joy with drums and cymbals and some kind of musical instrument, that long crooked thing. Notice how the stone has another stone in it. I forget what that term is. Interesting. It's interesting the artist didn't find a way to use that as part of the design. It simply is in the rock. More jubilation. That looks like a sigh, doesn't it? For cutting wheat. But these also look like weapons, certainly weapons. There's a crooked sword, a knife, some kind of lance. Where the people on the first elephant are going to slide off. Here a horse with its feet propped up on what looks like a hippopotamus. But certainly a boar, perhaps, with those tusks sticking out. The archaeologists have numbered these stones, these carvings. Interesting because either the stone has that coloration in it or weathering has created it. I think it's the stone, but how interesting that it appears to create one of those gossamer type saris on this elephant, as well as painting up its face. Wonder what that close association between the horses and the pigs symbolize. Or the boar. Is the boar actually then that reiteration of Vishnu? Does this elephant have his trunk hooked about? It's interesting because it shows an elephant doing damage to the enemy, but it seems to also show a woman or something kneeling beneath that horse. Some of these stones look particularly nice. I don't know if they're restored or restorations or reproductions. It's a detail in the elephant showing the cloth device that it has over its back, the leather probably that goes around its trunk, its whole body trunk. Here another enemy being trampled by the elephant. This side seems very well protected from the elements. This panel is nice because it shows the characters on the elephants pretty much intact. Notice this large flat shield versus the round small ones we've seen. Does that indicate a different ethnic group that was fighting also? Here a mix of characters. I wonder, some of these stones depictions seem to be copies of others, and I wonder if, for example, one or two men were specialists in making a certain stone, if you will, carvings, and just reproduced many of them, which they then used. Continue our traipse, leaving that till the last, and go over and see these over here. There are three of them that line the far west side of this fenced enclosure. Different allies. Beside this temple, as I work my way to the west, are these large stones, and then this depression here that doesn't look like it's been worked, not like the Incas would have done. They're looking very much like Stonehenge or leftovers from the Incas. And this, I can't remember the term for a collection of architectural detail like this, but it's always kind of fun to look at it and imagine the people who carved these. Beautiful detail, and yet unprotected. Isn't that a shame? A closer look at that radiating or radiator design, which I have not seen anywhere until here. It is these three temples on the left that we're going to visit now, plus perhaps a couple of shrine sites. That have been very badly demolished over time, but the Kandaria is the first one, the Devi the second, and the Chitragupta, whatever it is, third. How overwhelming it would be in the day if all of this area that we're seeing here were packed with similar type temples. I need you to contain and constrain yourself because, according to my notes, most of the female beauty and sexual acrobatics are here. In particular, my notes record, is the handstand position. So we'll enter into this temple quickly before the group behind me arrives. Great similarity, but different.
That was crocodile. Crocodiles will come.
You get a sense of heavy massiveness here because the detail's so obscured by the weathering now. Apparently there's a portrayal of the 5 heads of Shiva. I forget how many iterations there are. And I don't know if these little columns are of marble or not. Notice how the rocks are shifting.
And there's Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, 3 gods. Brahma, Shiva, Vishnu.
That's a woman praying in the inner sanctum. The redundancy here to the other temple we saw, Lakshmi, probably reflects that the story's the same. It's just being told differently, graphically. Here, the arm of this character is well worn or used, touched, as well as the left breast of that character. How these things get broken off over time, unless it's just vandals who are willing to challenge their own gods or others. It's interesting, the two characters just off center to the right look like they're lamenting something, but yet the panel seems to reflect some kind of activity. Whether it's joyous or not, I don't know. This may be captives. And if these are hymns she's singing, or classic religious songs that all Indians know.
Yeah.
It's a huge linga.
It's marble stone.
Marble stone.
Puja, flower, water, rice, it can be hard.
The woman points out there are actually 6 heads of Shiva here. On the entrance here, some unique detail. It's interesting that as big and expensive and involved these temples are, they conform very much to similar design elements, such as this lower portion of details, graphics, and then upper portion here of the monsters that we've seen before, and then the portrayals of humans and human activities, war, probably sex, probably farming, probably living life in general, may be depicted here. I do wonder what the different elevations or levels, of which there's so many, indicate. Are they levels of approach to heaven? Are they reflecting the multiplicity of lives, of reincarnation until you finally reach nirvana? Here we had, in the other temple, 2 levels of characters. Here we have 3. What the third does for us, I don't know. I do gather that some of these nymphs are being quite provocative. And as an artist, it'd be interesting to study in detail this sculpture, particularly in light of what we've learned as Euro-Americans of Greek sculpture, etc. These appear to not only have great realism, but have pushed that realism to the sultry level intentionally. What a giant, magnificent playground for squirrels as they chase themselves around the inner seas. Look at that. A graphic designer could spend hours with a telescope just focused on all of this stuff. I'll go through all of this in detail since you don't want to miss a thing. Imagine the scope of understanding of his project the designer had to have to keep in control the elevations and the recessing of the different elevations or extension of them all the way up towards the top. That would have been I would think, a masterpiece of design. Compare that idea with a modern obelisk skyscraper. 3 dimensions fundamentally. Here, innumerable. Trying to peek into crevices and see things. This looks like one of our little nymphs doing serious damage to a dragon. This is the first frieze from the bottom of human characters. Warlike there, but contrasted with sexual there. And as Woody Allen said, sex between 2 people is great. Sex between 5 is magnificent. This is a curious mix of sex and something. Here, what looks like 2 elephants facing off, but I don't know that that's true. I wonder how the designer inspired these carvings in the artists. Did he have master drawings that they worked from? Wonder if anyone knows. This is interesting because that elephant in the middle appears to have black paint on it, and above him also, as well as a red tinge. Is it possible all this was painted? It's on the scraps to the right, more black, some white. This is the second level from the bottom of the frieze of people and animals. It looked like to be in good shape. This looks like some very acrobatic and frenetic sex. That 2 look like they're redundant. I wonder what people gain from this. Is this mindset towards sex still a part of, and has it always been a part of, Indian culture? Could this somehow account for 1.2 billion? Even in the mini shrines down here at these lower levels, as the intimation of sex. Now let's stop for a moment and be intellectual. Look at the magnificent curve of that nymph's body. How natural that can look. A little bit too flowing, almost defying skeletal structure, but beautiful. What this stub of a monument is, but certainly that's suggestive of the breasts of these characters. Certainly this dude has great merit here. And here as a partner to that temple is this somewhat smaller temple. This is the one we've just been in that I'm thinking as a companion to the larger one. Remember to put all of it on this large platform with a temple in between. Now notice that the grade slopes down for some reason. Is it a female version of this big temple on my left? Up on the left, Gampuram, it looks like there's been some substantial remodeling or restoration of those pieces. Simple, they just cemented them over. Or not. Maybe it's part of the actual design. Maybe the lighter portions reflect restoration. This is a simplified design with those very plain upper layers. Here, 3 panels or friezes of characters. It does look different, but I'd have to spend some considerable time defining what I mean there. It's the only panel that from a distance appears to have any sexual connotation. I'd have to spend some time to unravel that graphic. Were these poses of these nymphs that are so sultry and sinuous and sexy designed to stimulate the populace? Designed to sanction, if not glorify, sex within the religious umbrella? I don't know why not. Sex may well have preceded violence. This does appear to be a smaller but very similar in design temple to the large one. The redundancy is overwhelming. Maybe it'll seem less so when I look at videos. I wonder if Indian old songs and literature in any way at all adds to our understanding of this sexual focus. I wonder what the symbology of what surrounds this character is. On this I saw that small curly Q on the lower right and wondered if it was somehow a signature of the artist. I don't see it elsewhere. And on to the next huge complex. That was the first set of temples we went in, but again a pan to give us a sense of how much real estate there was here for the temples that came before. And notice that these bases that these temples are built on, at least the face of them now, is chunks of older temples. This is a distance view of the Vishvanath Temple that we'll visit last. A little bit more plain, but still well-designed dome. On the inside, quite a bit more elaborate, I think. Carving on the pillars, but otherwise exactly the same design. The dogma of religious architecture. But religion is nothing if it's not dogma. Notice that this gives us the illusion of a bigger dome. Don't think we saw that before. I'd have to double check. Well, imagine this has some architectural religious significance. A square building structure, if you will, or at least kind of square. Then this, what almost looks octagonal, and then another square portion here, defined by these pillars, and then in the center of that, a round dome. Again, this is a holy figure that looks plain to me, but it's of Vishnu and other characters, probably as instantly recognizable to the Hindi as any kind of representation of Christ would be to a Christian cultured person. Again, I don't know if this lower part is red sandstone or not. Interesting, these steps gave people access to the balcony. You wonder for what reason. Well, this lower portion looks to be restored, and simply so, as you can see from this portion. Otherwise, we're looking at essentially the same design. You can see the rough cement restoration up above, but a three-tiered. This character holding their right foot up. Interesting to spend some time considering how natural that is. I don't think the leg bends quite that way. Notice how similar this central carving is to what we've seen on the other temples. Almost seems to be exact. Possibly the same artist, same sculptor. You wonder if the designer and the tradespeople built most of these temples, or at least their lineage did, particularly where religious dogma in architecture and in stories is so prevalent versus the competitive variety of the Havelis of the businessmen in the Haveli towns. Notice how much of this had to be just roughly fleshed out. This temple, we're supposed to be able to see Asparas, which is in Suras Sundaras, which are two of the kinds of nymphs, as well as elephant fights and stone carriers. Believe it or not, I'm looking for the 11-headed iteration of Shiva. It's just that I know that you want to see these other panels, so I'm searching for those. Looks like a boar-headed man. Vishvanath Temple, just a view from behind it. A pretty tree because of the pink color of its leaves, contrasted with the green. It's a spindly bush, but with a beautiful flower, as with this one. These are probably domesticated plants, but in this part of the world, there may be no distinction. Bush that gets its subtle color from, I can't tell whether that's a dead flower or just what it is. Don't remember what kind of tree this is that has these individual, what look like fronds coming off of a larger frond with tiny little leaves. Vishvanath. From the side, you'll notice again the remains of other temples. This may actually be some of the original detail. Hard to tell. Two elephants flank our access. This apparently is the Nandi Shrine. Nandi meaning the bull, that is the iteration of Vishnu. The redundancy is starting to tell on me. There are now 22 such temples remaining from a original 80. I assume that includes the whole area around Khajuraho. It's interesting because up above that shrine, it appears they just cobbled stones together to give the illusion that there was something there. The most novel thing are these elephants standing on their own platforms on the corners. Here are only 2 sets per level of carved forms. A series of elephants. This front one with its trunk wrapped around a human. And here it almost looks like the man on the left is impaling the man on the right. Who knows what's going on here? It's be fighting between elephants. Notice how the man on the right is reeled backwards. People to the left look like they're carrying weapons. Here the elephants do battle with that lion character that we've seen in statue form. It's interesting, it's almost rural. Those look like deer, but maybe they're bears. Could these be instruments of field workers? Someone playing a flute? Ladies with bowls perhaps in their hands? Here drums and another flute. A whole panel that's similar to what we've just seen, suggesting music, joviality, partying. And I'll leave that up to your imagination. Camels added to the mix. Are these warriors or farmers? Interesting that some of this work looks like it's in red sandstone. Is this meant to portray fighting elephants? This panel even more so. Look at the small figure on the elephant. Look at the detail in the cloth that covers its back. Perhaps captives linked together. We will not be outclassed by all of the other temples. Here's some pruriency to spice up the day. Interesting how artistically the sculpture was forced to crush in that horse and its rider in that narrow vertical space. Guessing that this white color was some kind of unfortunate whitewash, but hopefully I'm wrong. This is interesting for obvious reasons. One, the onion-shaped dome at the forefront, and then the mainly white base. This temple is only 200 years old, and it's a mix of Muslim for the dome, Christianity for the centerpiece, and then Hindu for the back. And its purpose 200 years ago was to express a harmony between religions at large. It looks like the remains of painting up there. Notice the circle like we saw at the temple in Orcha. You see remnants of the color, that turquoise green that we've seen before. Now that may be a weathered color, but it shows that there was color used on this building. The white that we see may have just been the base. I would imagine all of this would have been painted. That detail just begs for color. What's interesting is that the roof lines are different to reflect the different religions, and this lower portion is different to reflect the Hindi. It only seems detail-wise different, but the Christian and the Muslim, while the Christian's larger, they seem to be almost identical designs. Thus concludes our visit to this very outstanding World Heritage Site. Friends tell me that this is called Masala.
Masala.
Huh?
Masala. Chaat masala.
Chaat Masala. And I bought it from that
Yeah.
little place over there where you can actually see the name as he just described it.
Chaat banda. Like this.
Oh, tasty.
Tasty.
Ah, very good.
Tasty.
Yeah. Potato. Just flip them over the fry. And put a couple more on. Those are just potato balls that we mashed onto there. Oil just to make them cook and fry right. And tomatoes to cook in there. Yeah.
After you will make yourself.
I make myself, yes. Now this recipe is for 5 portions, as you can see. Now how you make the potato balls is an interesting question. Looks like he's used 4 tomatoes, bunch of onions. Got a pretty good flame kicking underneath there. Ever hopeful. Already. Corn? Or some kind of bean? Bean? No. A bit of salt and pepper stuff. Have to take that one out. Some salt. Special ingredient. You have to look up recipes to find out what that was. Just going to take one of these for every potato ball and crunch them up on there so it makes another crunchy thing. There it looks like cilantro. I think that may be cilantro. Crunching up some of those thingies we saw right here. And we'll spread those on there, give it a crunch along with everything else that's in there.
Hello, Mr. George.
Hello, how are you? Good, thank you. Some special sauces, who knows what those are? No clue what those things are. I have to go to an Indian restaurant, just get somebody to tell me what those things are. Fed that family over here, he now starts feeding more of that family, and hopefully each of us 3 here will get some too. I've seen many such cruel examples of fate.